All right, let's talk about a man whose life is one of the most insane case studies in human potential you will ever come across. I mean, we are talking about an almost unbelievable contrast between where someone started and where they ended up. And trust me, his story begins at absolute rock bottom. So just picture this for a second. You're 24 years old, you're tipping the scales at nearly 300 pounds. And your job? You're working a dead-end gig, spraying for cockroaches overnight. The one dream you ever had, to join the military's elite Navy SEALs, well, you already tried that and failed. That wasn't some hypothetical scenario. That was the reality for a man named David Goggins. From that exact point, that low, he would go on to become not just the Navy SEAL, but one of the most decorated endurance athletes on the entire planet. And that just begs the question, right? How? How does that happen? What on earth changed inside his mind to make what seems impossible actually possible? I mean, look at the extremes here. It's just staggering. On one side, you have a childhood filled with so much trauma that it literally gave him a stutter and got him labeled as learning disabled. And on the other side, achievements that honestly sound superhuman. I mean, a world record for pull-ups, and get this, he's the only person in history to complete the elite training for the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. This isn't just an inspiring story. This is like a data set on what a human being is truly capable of. And that is exactly why his book, Can't Hurt Me, is so damn powerful. Goggins is really clear about this. He is not trying to make you feel good. He's not your motivational speaker. He's handing you a psychological manual, a technical guide for literally rewiring your own brain to systematically destroy its own limits. And at the absolute heart of his entire philosophy is this one number, 40%. It's the key that unlocks everything else he talks about. He calls it the 40% rule. Okay, so the rule is pretty simple, but when you really think about it, it's profound. The idea is this: when your mind and your body are absolutely screaming at you to stop, when you genuinely believe you have hit your absolute limit and you cannot take another step, you are only at about 40% of your true capability. That means there's a huge, untapped 60% just sitting there waiting, but you can only access it if you push past those mental blocks your brain puts up to keep you safe and comfortable. So the big question is, how do you even begin to tap into that other 60%? Well, the very first tool in his manual, it has nothing to do with motivation or positive thinking. Nope. It starts with something way, way harder: radical, unfiltered honesty. He calls it the accountability mirror. Now, this is not about looking in the mirror and telling yourself, "You're great, you can do it." It is the exact opposite. It's about looking at your own reflection and confronting every single excuse, every lie you tell yourself, every compromise you've made, with zero sugarcoating. And this is literally how Goggins started his entire transformation. He stood in front of his mirror at 297 pounds, and instead of writing positive affirmations, he wrote down his failures, the goals he hadn't hit, the potential he was just wasting. These weren't little encouragements. They were invoices for debts he owed his own future. Okay, so once you face the truth, what's next? The next step is to actually build the mental strength to do something about it. This is really the core psychological process in the book, and he calls it callousing the mind. You know, think about it like this. A guitarist's fingertips get calloused from pressing on the strings, right? The calluses don't make the strings feel soft, but they protect the skin and allow them to play for longer. Goggins says we can do the exact same thing for our minds by intentionally and repeatedly doing things that make us uncomfortable. But, and this is a really critical distinction he makes, he is not talking about self-destruction. You have to learn the difference between pain that signals real injury, which you absolutely have to listen to, and the pain of just pure discomfort. You know, being tired or bored or wanting to quit. That discomfort, that's not a stop sign. That's the signal that the training is working. But what happens when you're deep in that discomfort zone, when every single part of your brain is just screaming at you to quit? Well, for that exact moment, Goggins has a very specific tool, and it's called the cookie jar. Your cookie jar is basically your own personal archive of evidence against your own weakness. It's a mental list that you build before you need it, and you fill it with every single time you've ever overcome something hard. And not just your proudest moments, but the ugly wins, the times you weren't even sure you were going to make it through. He tells this story about running a 100-mile ultramarathon where his body was just completely breaking down. He didn't fantasize about the finish line. No. He reached into his mental cookie jar. He remembered the pain of Hell Week during SEAL training. He remembered surviving an abusive childhood. Each one of those memories was a cookie, a piece of solid proof that he had been through hell before and walked out the other side. So from there, Goggins gets into some more, let's call them aggressive mental strategies. These are for dealing with the outside world and your own internal fears. It's a two-part system he calls taking souls and armor plating. So on one hand, taking souls is all about weaponizing the doubt that other people have in you. When someone underestimates you or tells you you can't do something, you don't get angry. You get to work. You use their negativity as fuel to outperform their expectations so completely that it crushes their doubt. Then there's armor plating. That's the internal version. You deliberately put yourself in situations where you might fail or be judged so that over time, the fear of failure just loses its power over you. But after all the talk of brutality and breaking records and suffering, there's this one insight, buried late in the book, that kind of reframes everything. And this, quietly, might be the most important part of the entire manual. Think about it. After everything he's been through, the abuse, Hell Week, ultra marathons on broken bones, what do you think David Goggins would say was his single hardest fight? He actually admits that for years, all those extreme physical challenges, they were just a way for him to outrun his own trauma. The real breakthrough for him wasn't breaking a pull-up record. It was learning to sit still in a therapist's office and finally confront the very pain that made him want to run in the first place. And this really reveals the ultimate message of the book. Building all this mental toughness, but on a foundation of running away from yourself, that's just creating heavier armor. True, lasting strength comes when you integrate that hardness with psychological healing and actual self-awareness. So, what can you actually do with all this? Let's make it simple. 3 things. First, find your mirror and have that brutally honest conversation. Write down where you know you're only operating at 40%. Second, start building your cookie jar right now. Write down 10 hard things you've survived. And third, pick one small, voluntary discomfort and just do it every day for this week. Because at the end of the day, the message here isn't that you need to go run 100 miles or become a Navy SEAL. The real point is to stop lying to yourself about the gap between the person you are today and the person you know you are truly capable of being, and to start intentionally closing that gap. Because the truth is, most of us are living our entire lives in that first 40%. And the only question this manual really leaves you with is this: what are you going to do about the other 60% that's just sitting there, waiting for you?